So what we'll do is we're gonna take a small area in the middle, about 6 feet by 8 feet. We're gonna excavate down first using a backhoe for the first few feet, and then by hand. And we're gonna go down and see if this anomaly, number one, is indeed human remains or not. Then we'll see what condition they're in. I mean, there could be they could be in great condition, they could be in very poor condition. And then we will see if we can determine whether these human remains are indeed related to the race massacre, or whether we have a high degree of confidence that they are. So that is really the goal, coming up here right now. If we do find remains and we are convinced or feel fairly solidly that these are race massacre remains, we will then go ahead and stop at that point. We will cover up the hole and then await approval for the next step.
How big a team are we talking in terms of carrying out this investigation?
Well, that's a great question, and that is, we had originally planned to do this in April, right before the pandemic hit. So our team is smaller, but it's still pretty good size. I would imagine there'll be a dozen of us off and on over the course of the excavation that's within the enclosed area.
And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. I mean, Oklahoma has seen a surge in cases as of late. So while you have a smaller number of people participating in the dig, what other precautions are you taking?
Well, quite a few, actually. So I'll be arriving, back home in Tulsa on Sunday night. And the first thing that'll happen when I check into the hotel is that I will be tested for COVID by a member of the Tulsa Fire Department. We will all wear protective gear, PPE. We'll all follow, safe distancing guidelines, all of that. So it's everyone is hyper aware of that, and that's why the number of people allowed inside this area has been very highly controlled and reduced.
Speaking of being able to keep physical distance while carrying out this work, does that inhibit or make things more difficult because you can't get as close to one another while you are researching this area?
I would say, yeah, I think it'll slow us down a bit. No question. It's certainly after we get, through these first few 2 or 3 feet that'll be excavated, mechanically. After that, it's going to be people using trowels by hand. So that's going to go slow. But that kind of work is done carefully and slow as well. So yes, I think we would have more people in the hole under normal circumstances than we will now. But this is, there's a deep commitment. Nobody's getting paid for this. This is a deep commitment that all of the professionals, the archaeologists, the forensic anthropologists, and others, people from the medical examiner's office are there. We consider this to be, almost sacred work, and people are going to do it very carefully anyway.
How important is it to carry out this investigation of the mass graves for the 1921 massacre? Because here we are 99 years later, and still not much is known about the event.
Well, it's hugely important, and it's hugely important to remember that these individuals that we think are here, if not they're elsewhere, these were largely African-American massacre victims that were buried while their loved ones were being held under armed guard at various internment camps during the city. Martial law was declared near the end of the massacre. The National Guard troops came in, and they had a problem. They had a problem with these bodies, what they're going to do with them, but rather to do the humane things, have people come and identify these individuals, these bodies. Instead, they just decided that they were going to bury them, and they weren't going to mark the graves either. They weren't going to tell anyone, where they were. So these are individuals who were all murder victims, by the way, who were literally thrown away. And this is in part for the families, certainly, who lost loved ones, to see if they can find out what happened to the remains of their loved ones. But it's also an opportunity for the city of Tulsa and for the nation as a whole, really to welcome these people back, to say these were victims of this horrific incident. And if we can identify them, we will. But most importantly, we are going to be able to rebury them with honor.